Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. My parents divorced when I was 11-ish because my dad had cheated on my mom with his accountant. He loved her and asked my mom for a divorce. Despite my mom trying to save the marriage, he was very firm in wanting a divorce, so they did. I woke up in my new apartment and asked where my dad was, and that was when I found out. I never saw it coming. I was excited the entire summer. I'd be living in a new house and transfer to a new school. Growing up, my dad had to hide the fact that he spent time with me from his new wife. So I've learned to be his liar whenever my mom asked what I've done with my dad on the days he was supposed to take me. I'd say we went to his office or to the park, when in reality, my dad would drop me off at my grandparents' and I'd watch TV till he came and picked me up. When I was 14, my mom had to travel internationally and had an agreement with my dad he would live with me while she was gone. But his wife went bonkers when she learned about it. So I was left alone in my own house for 2 weeks, and my grandmother visited me to drop off food every couple days. Other times I just had takeouts. Fast forward to now. I'm in my 30s and have kept my relationship with my dad at arm's length. He has called me many times, pressuring me to get married in the past 5 years. My partner and I have been together for the past 10 years. So last year, when we got engaged, we told him and organized both families to meet for the first time. I never had any hope that he'd actually show up at the greet and meet dinner. But he showed up for every single one of the events and more. Showed my in-laws around, bought them gifts, etc. I was so happy, secretly, and surprised. It was the first time I felt like my dad had showed up for me. He talked about coming to my wedding, and I asked if he'd bring his current wife and kids over. He said no, but you should invite all of us anyways. But your auntie, what I was supposed to call his current wife, will stay home with your brother. They live in China, and we're getting married in Australia. My stepbrother, who I've never met, as I was not allowed to, is in his senior year in high school, so it made sense that she'd want to stay and help him with school. I didn't think much about it. When the time came for invitations, I invited his whole family regardless, as it would be rude not to. That was a couple months ago. Last week I had dinner with my cousin, who told me that my dad's current wife has been having fights with him, and said if my dad comes to my wedding, she will divorce him. And earlier this week, my mom told me that my dad cannot come anymore. She also said that my dad's current wife has his passport, and he cannot apply for a visa behind her back. At that time, I told both my cousin and my mom that it's okay. I never had any expectation that he would come. And it's okay. I never planned on having my dad give me away, and I went on lightheartedly joking that I'm not his cow, and I always wanted to walk the aisle myself anyways. I kinda lied to myself, saying I knew this would happen and it's okay. But I've been crying in my dreams, and started crying in real life as well. I guess I'm grieving because I realize I will never have a father who will show up for me and whom I can really rely on. I kept thinking when he divorced my mom and tore our family apart, he did it to be with his current wife and family. My stepbrother is from his wife's previous marriage. She cheated with my dad and ended her marriage. He has chose his family over me over and over again, and now he's choosing to skip my wedding to keep his marriage and family together. I don't know if I can say he ever had any love for me. I seem to be the thing that he disposes of at the earliest convenience. He never contacted me since last time I messaged him happy birthday, or told me he won't be able to attend. And I'm too afraid of getting hurt to reach out to him. I'm considering to just go no contact from now on and pretend he had died. I don't know what else to do. Any advice on how to proceed with this or see this from a different perspective? Also, tell me walking down the aisle by myself is okay, please? He chose his new family over OP. He chose to break OP's family for his new one. He'd rather deceive OP and keep his family than interact with OP. He chose to break many hearts, and he doesn't care. It's time to cut him off. OP can send him a message and tell him what she thinks about all this. Your father's just an a-hole for letting his wife treat you like this all your life. Leaving you home alone was inexcusable. She's an insecure, bitter little woman, but he is spineless and is worse. He never stood up for you and never will. Put him out of your mind in life. Don't let him and his wife ruin your day. You can walk yourself down the aisle, or a friend or relative could. Have the best wedding ever, and just go and stay no contact with your sperm donor. I think it's probably time to cut him off completely, and make sure he knows why. Maybe I'm overreacting, but it seems he's been okay to abandon you and leave you alone since you were a little kid, without caring how you felt genuinely, and the way he is written makes him sound like a complete jerk. And missing an important event like this shows his priorities clearly. Any situation in the future you expect him to be there for. Who knows if he actually will be? What's next? He's gonna hide the fact he's visiting his grandchild from his crazy wife? Why does she have issues with him being there for his child? Why does her objection mean he's okay just treating you like this? I think he needs to be cut off for good, and know why. And that he's not welcome in your life if he's not going to actively participate and treat you like a dirty secret. But you could also do this and keep your relationship the same. Just know what to expect from him. So, when I first met her, I was very excited because my husband used to talk about his mom a lot, and they had a very close relationship. She seemed like an amazing woman from everything he told me, and when I met her, she honestly reminded me of Mrs. Claus. She had rosy cheeks, short white hair, and those cute circle glasses. I was so excited to get to know her personally. At first, she was very nice and sweet to me. She and I talked a lot upon our first meeting, and I felt like there was a real connection. However, she didn't stay that way, and it was only a facade. When it was announced that my husband and I were engaged, she did not like that. At first, she was opposed to it because she felt like we didn't really date that long, 6 months. And I did agree with it. You don't want your child rushing into marriage with someone they haven't been with for even a year. She tried to talk him out of it, and like I said at first, I understood where she was coming from. But after a while, that would be the only thing she would talk about. I would hear him on the phone with her, and I can hear him saying, "Yes, I'm sure," like 10 times. He ended up telling me that she thinks I pressured him into proposing to me when that's not even the case. We never even talked about marriage. Yeah, he brought it up on the passing, like I would want to marry you one day, but I've heard that same thing from high school boyfriends, so I didn't think much of it. It did start to irritate me a little that she would constantly question him about a big decision like that, and try to make him change his mind, because I had thought she and I had a decent relationship. But when I talked about it with friends and family, they told me to not take it personally, because he is her only child, so she's not ready to let go and such. So I learned how to swallow it down. Things only got worse from there. I invited her to go dress shopping with me and my family. I thought maybe if she saw the dresses and whatnot, she would get excited. And she did look at dresses with me and ask if I would like this or that, and she was smiling. So, of course, I'm like, good. She's in a good mood and maybe she's accepting it. While I'm in the dressing room, she knocks on the door and comes in. She grabs my hand and she gets in a very low voice and says, "I wasn't going to ask this, but is my son paying for the dress?" The way she asked it in such a sweet voice that at first I didn't realize her true feelings. So I said yes, he was. And she's like, "Oh well, traditionally the bride's family does, and blah blah." So yeah, she's right about that. But he wanted to pay for it, so why was her panties all in a bunch? It was awkward with her after that. Then at our wedding rehearsal, she tells him that she's there for him, and she emphasized it. That really bothered me, because she should be here for both of us. Then of course at the dinner rehearsal, we did toasts at the dinner instead of at the wedding. Everyone sang all nice and wonderful things about both of us, and it was really sentimental. His mother gets up to make her toast, and all she says is, "I've prayed about this, and I think you need to call off the wedding." The wedding was literally the next day. I was so pissed off about that. Fast forward 3 years later, my husband was out of town working and his mom's birthday was coming up, and she was having a party. Of course, with our history, I was hesitant to show up. We hadn't really had much interchanges after the wedding. There's been some awkward encounters, but either way, I decided to show my face at her birthday party. I sent her a little text saying I was going to be in attendance about a week before. I go to the party and I spot my husband's ex-girlfriend there. I never met her before, but I know what she looks like. First off, why is she here? Why is she in contact with my mother-in-law? Come to find out, my mother-in-law still chats with her and such. While I was there, I was forced to talk to this woman and pretend to be friendly with her. Then his mom makes this snarky comment to the ex-girlfriend that they dated for 8 years. That's a really long time to be with someone, blah blah, as if she was trying to rub it in my face. I'm just like, wow, that's crazy. He dated someone for 8 years and didn't want to marry her. I get why it may be confusing on why he didn't get married to someone he dated for 8 years, because that's almost a decade. But he told me he just never loved her in that way. She kept bringing up her job and all the things going on in her life, trying to make me feel inferior. After that, I was done with his mom. I don't give a duck about her. I told him what she did, that she obviously planned this woman to come so she can try to mess with my head. My husband was also upset that she did that and did stick up for me. It kind of made a drift in their relationship as well. They weren't talking as much, and of course, she blamed me for that. She claimed that I turned her son against her and that he is whipped. Why she say that about her daughter-in-law? We finally had a sit-down talk and about what is going on. We each had a turn to speak about the problem. So I said my part. Then she said her real reason for hating me. She thinks I married her son for his money. She says that when he met me, I didn't have a penny to my name, and that really hurt me because I did grow up poor. She's mad that he didn't get a prenup, and it's a standard procedure when someone have a certain wealth status. She said his last girlfriend was perfect for him because they had careers and wealth, and she was a blonde. That comment made my stomach turn because I'm black. And I got this sick feeling that it was the real reason she hates me, not because I was poor. It was because of my skin color. She also said she hopes we never have children, which is something we both want dearly. I couldn't help but get emotional about it. My husband thinks I'm taking the blonde part the wrong way, but he agrees the statement about the children is low. But I realized he grew up in a small town where there's nothing but white people. His mom imagined him with a white woman, and he brings home a poor black girl and marries her in 6 months. It makes sense now. He keeps saying that she doesn't hate me. She's just stuck in her ways and is very traditional. It does hurt that he can't just call it what it is and stop making excuses for her. I would never in my life try to get my husband to choose between me and his mom because that's just not right. But I seriously don't want this woman in my life, nor our unborn children's lives. He obviously doesn't want that, but I don't know where to go from here. He's going to continuously make excuses for her. You have to decide if you're okay with that. She's not going anywhere. She's R, and he either doesn't see it or that he's willing to overlook it. I know you may love him, but to try to keep this woman in your life shows he doesn't care about you. You guys need to agree on very firm boundaries with this woman. Your mother-in-law is not traditional. She's R. This issue is not going to go away and will get worse if you have children. Talk through this carefully with a counselor present and document your agreement. Low contact might be the best compromise, with the provision that no contact is immediately implemented once a boundary is crossed. I'm getting married next weekend to my fiancé, Frank, whom I've been with for 6 years, engaged for 1.5. My best friend, also bridesmaid, Mary, and I have been friends for 23 years. Background: Frank and I have been together for 6 years, met after I finished university, and we've always had a pretty solid relationship. We are best friends and share the same sense of humor. We are financially stable and want the same things in life. He's a great travel companion, confident, blah blah blah. In short, we have a wonderful relationship. Because we've been together for a while, our friends group is pretty integrated. I love all his buddies, and he gets along great with my ladies, especially my best friend Mary, who he has sort of a sibling-like relationship with. Kind of a friendly banter, teasing, etc. All in all, we are all pretty lucky to know each other, and I'm thankful everyone gets along. Anywho, let's get to the issue. Last night was our rehearsal dinner. Everyone, parents, bridal party, and officiant, was to meet at the venue at 6 p.m. and then go for dinner hosted by Frank's parents at a nice restaurant. Everyone but the officiant had arrived, and we were eagerly awaiting him so we could get started as people were getting hungry since they had arrived right after work. I get a call from the officiant saying that there had been an emergency, but not to worry, he was on his way and would be another hour and a half tops. I'm kind of miffed, but since he was kind of needed to start the rehearsal, I let it go and asked Frank if he could go grab some sandwiches to tide everyone over while I stayed and discussed some last-minute details with our mothers. Frank says sure, but he doesn't have his license with him. I had driven our car to the venue, so I offered to go instead. But Mary eagerly jumps in and says, "I'll drive. I can help Frank with the sandwiches." Great. Off they go through the venue doors towards the parking lot. I see my car keys sitting on one of the tables by my purse and grab them to run to Frank, as I assumed they were going to take our car. As I run through the door, I see them about to get into Mary's car, Frank holding the passenger's door open for her. And as soon as she starts to step in, he gives her butt a squeeze and rubs it between her cheeks. Not an "oops, I accidentally grazed your butt" cheek, but a full-on S-like squeeze. And I saw him kind of run his hand under her dress, and it looked like he rubbed her down there. Her dress was riding up as she placed her purse in the back seat. At that point, I kind of just back up under the awning and watch them drive off. They are both smiling and laughing, so Mary is definitely not pissed about the butt squeeze. I don't know whether to be pissed or upset at this point. I run back inside and pull my sister, 33 female, aside and tell her what I saw. She immediately gets pissed off and starts to go off about how she's always had a bad feeling about the two of them, how they act inappropriate. Meanwhile, I'm trying to diffuse her reaction so no one catches on to what's happening. I calm her down and somehow convince myself that it was probably just a joke. A stupid joke, as Frank can sometimes be too much, but a joke nonetheless. Mary and Frank arrive back about 45 minutes later, just as the officiant arrives. So I don't really have a chance to ask him about what he did or why they took so long, since Subway is literally a 2-minute drive away from us. We whiz through the rehearsal and then make our way to dinner a few minutes away. My sister and my mom rode in our car, so again, I couldn't say anything to him since I didn't want my mom to hear any of it. Finally, at the restaurant, as soon as we order, I turned to him and quietly said, "I saw what you did in the parking lot to Mary. We are going to talk later." He gave me a confused stare, took a sip of his drink, and said, "You're nuts." When it was the two of us in the car on the way home, he was acting like everything was normal. I told him I saw him squeeze and rub Mary's butt, and he said I must have been imagining things. We had a screaming match in the car, which eventually ended up with me apologizing to him and somehow convincing myself that I had indeed imagined everything. When we got home, he fell asleep almost immediately, since he wakes up at 5:30 a.m. for work. I waited an hour to make sure he was in a deep sleep before snatching his phone to snoop. He had it password protected, but I have always known the code, his year of birth. But surprise, surprise, he must have changed it because it wasn't unlocking. Finally, after several attempts and getting locked out for a few minutes, I tried my year of birth and it unlocked. I went straight to his texts. Nothing incriminating there. Nothing in his emails, pictures, BBM. Was about to give up and accept that I was crazy when I saw WhatsApp. And sure enough, there was a conversation with Mary along the lines of, "Frank, that dress, thumb touching index finger symbol. Mary, it's new. Frank, careful, you'll upstage the bride. Mary, didn't I already? Blushy face. Frank, shh." This conversation happened during dinner that night, apparently right in front of me. This morning, I pretended to sleep while he got ready for work. I've been feeling sick all day and still at work because I don't want to go home. I'm trying to make sense of it, and I have no idea what to do. Our wedding is literally next weekend, and we have already invested tens of thousands of dollars into it that we won't get back. There isn't even remotely a second option here. Repeat this out loud. I am excited to legally tie myself to a lowlife who is sleeping with my best friend because I want to get my money's worth of a sham wedding party. Does that sound right? Get his side of the story. Maybe that will answer a few of your questions. Just a shot. Either way, it may be worth postponing the wedding until you have some answers. Sorry for you. Look at the silver lining that you won't have to pay for a divorce later. Good luck. Update. Stuff went down on Friday night that led to me and my sister going to Mary's apartment because I knew something was up. She had bailed on picking up dresses with everyone. I found her and Frank sitting at her kitchen table, and she was crying. Basically, after a lot of screaming and yelling, I ran out with my sister on my heels telling Frank to duck off and to never contact me again. I was hyperventilating and crying the whole way home while my sister drove. Frank called me repeatedly, and I eventually agreed to meet with him. They had been fooling around for about 3 months, all starting after they had stayed up talking one night after a get-together at our place. I was drunk and passed out in bed. They agreed to meet up at her place to see where it went the following week, and they had been meeting once or two times a week ever since. He told me that she had confessed to being in love with him a few weeks ago, but he told her he wasn't willing to lose everything with me to be with her. She was understanding, but still wanted to keep the relationship going in secret, even if it meant doing it while Frank and I were married. After I had confronted Frank during the rehearsal, he said reality had dawned on him, and he realized how ducked up it all was. He said he must have freaked out about getting married, so he began his inappropriate relationship with her as a way to cope. He had gone to her place that Friday night to end things when I walked in on them. He pretty much cried and begged the whole time. He promised me he never slept with her, just made out and some other stuff, but never had S. I told him I needed time to think and to talk to Mary. Mary pretty much corroborated the whole thing. She begged and apologized too, saying she knew she ducked up, but that she always envied me in my relationship with Frank and always had a crush on him. She said she knew I would probably never forgive her. Frank went to stay at his dad's while I stay at our condo to take care of our dog and think about everything. His friend, groomsman Joe, who happens to live in our condo building, came by last night and told me he had no idea all of this was going down and that Frank was a piece of crap for doing this to me. He said a bunch of other nice and reassuring things to me and overall made me feel a tiny bit better. I was well into a few glasses of wine at this point and told Joe that I was definitely ending things with Frank. I just needed to figure out the whole wedding mess. I was so ducked up mentally that I kissed Joe and we ended up making out. He didn't stop me right at first, but after a few minutes, he said that it was inappropriate given all of the events that went down and left. So I felt even more low than I did before he had come. I am a piece of crap now, just like Frank and Mary. This whole thing is ducked up, and I'm just thinking of just going through with this crap show of a wedding and living a ducked up life with Frank because we deserve each other.